Hello, everyone. We are live in Los Angeles, California. I welcome everyone to the 2014 Global Transformation Show. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And as you know, Richard, this is my first ever transformation show for the year 2014, and I'm really excited.
Right.
I want to go ahead and present you to our audience because you're our first guest this year, and you have a lot to offer to our audience as far as knowledge and the process you went through of transformation. So right now, everyone, this is Richard Dana Brown. He is a SAG actor, producer, and writer of Hollywood and television film. So we're going to get you started. Richard, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited because you're going to be telling the audience a bit about your journey of transformation and the process you took upon yourself to evolve you forward in a very positive direction, and also lead you to who you are as a success today. So why don't we get started a little bit and tell the audience about your transformational journey?
Well, when I was a kid, I had two learning disabilities that went undiagnosed because nobody knew anything about it at the time, which was ADHD and dyslexia. So I struggled through all of school and almost didn't even graduate high school because of it.
And back then, they didn't have a diagnosis for that. As you know, a lot of people know, we now have resources and we now have diagnosis for these learning disabilities, but that's not something that was available to you back then.
No, so through my own frustration with it, plus the words of a teacher, I felt inability to learn. I couldn't learn. And fast forward several years to a job that I had working at an engineering firm, I was capable of actually doing complicated math and science calculations because it then clicked that I could learn. It was just I learned differently.
Yes, and I know your first setback came as a child because you had this learning disability, and how ironic is that now you are writing for Hollywood and you're producing films and you are collaborating with scripts with other producers as well. And that's the ironic thing about it, that you had a teacher set you back. Why? Because they told you. You want to share with the audience what they said to you?
They pulled me out of a math class and said that they needed the desk for somebody who could learn. So anytime something happened that I felt frustrated, I remembered that teacher's words. But thank God I also had a teacher that was the opposite, who told me that I could be anything that I wanted to be.
Which we call a powerful force in our journey.
Yes. So, you know, through times of, a failed relationship, I had a marriage that ended, so I became a single dad of 3 kids, So anytime that I had something, a setback or a failure, I would always remember that teacher's words of we need somebody who can learn. You can't learn, you can't do this. But there always came a point that I had to dig within myself, and I would hear, amongst others, this other teacher's voice to say, you can be anything you want.
Yes, and that's wonderful that you're sharing that, because as you know, I know there's a lot of parents out there who are facing the same challenge, and it must be very difficult for their children as well to know that they have this learning disability. And it's very tough for them to fit in society, and that's something you experienced as a child.
Well, I did, and I experienced not only the self-doubt and the self-disrespect, but you also get bullied, when you're the kid that's lagging behind or you can't read, so it is really, really hard for the kids.
What's important, I think, right now is that we've evolved even as a society, and now we have more resources. We have programs that are of support to parents with children with learning disabilities. But I think what's most important here about your transformational journey when it came to that setback is that it was a setback and it was a temporary one. But working for that firm as an adult really transformed your thinking and your way of life, didn't it?
Yeah, because I learned that I can do something. I just do things slightly different than other people. I learn a different way. So I was able to take that moment of realization to other avenues of my life, because then I'll be like, okay, most people do things this way, but I have to do it, this way and this way and this way. And it doesn't make me any less of a person than
That's
that
correct.
person.
Yes, that's wonderful. And that really helped you, because I know the time that you worked for this firm, although you had that setback as a child with a learning disability, you were forced to deal with circumstances and complex formulas.
Yep.
And you were able to do that.
Yeah, and it still amazes me to this day that I was able to do it. But, it was really a boost of my own self-confidence, that somebody able to show me something and then I comprehended it.
Yeah.
And then I was actually able to then in turn show somebody else how to do it.
Yes,
So,
that's correct. And you were able to evolve from that child that perhaps was facing
Yeah.
insecurity,
Yeah.
I'm sure. And it must have been at times even a little bit, you would say, of resentment, because here you had someone who was telling you you were not going to amount possibly to anything because you had this learning disability, and we know now that not to be true.
Right.
And you're actually utilizing an expertise right now in writing as a producer of films, and you've evolved from
Yeah.
from all these different things that you had to go through as a child. And I'm sure it was difficult for your parents, and of course more difficult even on you, because now when you're a child, you're carrying the burden of the school system,
Yep.
putting pressure on you,
And the
coming
feeling
home
that you have to
inadequate.
but you're feeling that this strong desire to make your parents happy, to do good. You just don't know how.
And that's a lot of pressure, and especially during that time when, back then there was no diagnosis, and I'm sure the school system thought you were a rebel, and perhaps pointed the finger at you and said, this child is a difficult child. We just don't want to deal with him.
Right. And it's one of those things where I learned to rely more on my social graces and my ability to entertain people than my ability to learn. And that's interesting that I was able to develop those skills back then, because now I utilize that today too. So.
And isn't that where now you're utilizing your creativity in the arts, in in the entertainment business in Hollywood? It's really helped you with your career right now. And we'll be discussing a little bit more about that a little later in the show. But that was just the beginning of your setback, your learning disability. You've also gone through personal challenges.
Well, had a marriage that ended and became a single dad of 3 kids, so that's certainly a struggle. Didn't know what I was doing, but I put up a front that I had everything perfect and figured out, and then tried to cover up the failures that I did, so nobody thought that I was not capable of doing it. Certainly not my ex, but it was just one of those things where I felt like a failure so many times as a single parent, and I didn't know how to do things. But then, I heard the bad teacher and I heard the good teacher at the same time. I can do anything, or I can't do anything. But it was just one of those things where I had to come to a realization at that point in time that I couldn't do everything perfectly. I couldn't do it all, so I had to kind of rely on those around me to kind of step in sometimes, because what was happening was I was giving so much to my kids and doing so much for my kids, but nothing for myself.
For yourself. And I think that's where your process of transformation also began. I know many times I want to let the audience know that accountability seems so scary to everybody, that word account, but it's really not. Accountability really means taking responsibility for your journey, for yourself. And we have to really, in order to start the process of transformation, we have to begin with ourselves.
Of course.
Because if we can't manage who we are as a person, how are we going to be able to manage our children, our relationships, and our environments around us?
Right, and during that time, it was an acceptance of the fact that this marriage ended not just because of my ex-wife.
Right.
Also understanding that she had a lot of experiences prior to us getting married that affected our ability to communicate and to work things out. And my upbringing also had things, those things that we bring into a relationship affect how the relationship works out.
Yeah.
So it's not, I can't blame all of her. It was just one of those things of maturing in that aspect and accepting the responsibility of my own part and saying, okay, even now today, her and I can get along fine, and she's married and doing well, and I'm glad for that, and I appreciate everything she does for the kids and stuff. So it's just been a much more maturing and much more healthier relationship that we've been able to have, because, and I think she's done the same process too, that we've just finally got centered within ourselves.
Yes, that transformation process that evolves us forward.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and as you know, I've also gone through challenges, and that's one commonality that we also have, is that I also went through a divorce, but we evolved from that. I also have an awesome relationship with my ex-husband. We communicate wonderfully. We share responsibility with our children, and that's something that I want the audience to learn from as well, that I want to take away that negative stigma of that if you're divorced or you no longer are in a relationship with someone you share children with, that it has to be a negative, resentful, angry, or perhaps even at times retaliating towards the other parent. We don't want that. We want to evolve forward, and we are capable of doing that because we've actually been through the process ourselves, so we know.
Yeah, and we know what that detriment to the kids when they're battling each other out. I mean, it's just like,
it's not healthy.
It's not healthy.
And that means that's kind of a manifestation. If you're still holding on to anger, resentment, or if you're retaliating against the mother, the father of your children, then you're not really evolving. You haven't even stepped into the process yet of transformation at that point.
And you're hindering your kids.
And you're hindering the children as well. And I'm so happy that regardless of your personal setback in your relationship, and you were in a relationship for over 12 years, you are past that, and you're now great friends, as I am as well with my ex, and we communicate really well, and that makes us healthy.
Yes.
And the children seeing that as well helps them. So they're like, okay, now I don't have to worry about mom because she's not placing her energy on the negative things, or have to worry about dad. And that's something wonderful that you've been able to do. What I also want to share with the audience and transition a little bit is that although you learned from your setback as a child with your learning disability, and then your personal life with your relationship, you also worked a little bit, a period of time with law enforcement, and you've also learned things from there that helped you evolve and grow and transition in your life.
Yeah, the time I spent in law enforcement in a small town, left the department as a police detective, it taught me a lot of that we are all humans, and we're all in this together, and it doesn't matter, and it goes back to things that my dad taught me, growing up. We're all susceptible to failures.
Yes.
We're all in this together, and nobody is an island, and I can't do everything perfectly. I can't allow all the burdens to be on my shoulders. I have to allow someone else to carry some. So I learned that during my time of law enforcement, that I got to see so many bad things, and it's so easy to just focus on those bad things, but there were also a whole lot of really, really good things and really great people that helped heal a lot of times of the bad things that when somebody could be a fellow officer, could be a citizen, just says thank you or
Right.
good job or something like that. It's a very healing thing. So, but we often, as law enforcement officers, put so much pressure on ourselves to carry the weight of an entire community
Yes.
that we often take that weight home with us. And
Personal to the
it's
personal
very,
life.
and it's very unfair to our families to do that.
And I'm glad you're sharing that because you were in law enforcement for about 5 years and you understand the stresses and the things that the people in uniform have to face every day when they're out there, and they're also placing their life in danger
Yeah.
as well. And one of the things that you learned from that is, regardless of what you're facing every day as a person in uniform, don't take that into your personal life with your wife, with your children, or the person that you're with that's supporting your journey at the time.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things also that you can't fix everything.
Right.
You know, when I was working, we had the 9/11, we had the DC sniper, and everybody. You know, we put so much pressure on ourselves to get this stuff fixed before anything else happened, as the society did us as well. But we just have to realize we're humans too.
Yeah, of course. And I know that impacted your life. That allowed you to grow because what you faced during your time that you were in law enforcement for 5 years, it taught you also about community. And that it regardless of what your background is, regardless of who you are, your title, adversity brings community together.
Oh, yeah,
and that was
absolutely.
one thing that you evolved as well as a person.
Yeah, because when the chips are down, people do come together. They set their differences aside. So I got the opportunity to see that before going off to a different division of investigations. So,
Yeah. And I thank you for sharing that because I know a lot of people in uniform and law enforcement right now are facing a lot of stress, a lot of, you know, with more crime in today's world. It's rising in many different areas, and you can attest to the fact that you can evolve from what you do every single day as a professional as well.
Right.
In other words, there are resources out there. There are things that can also help officers get through those stresses and that they have to face every day. We want them to evolve. We want them to be healthy for the community as well. That's very
for
important.
themselves.
And for themselves, yes. And, you know, I thank you for sharing that part of your journey because I know just most recently I heard about a case of an officer that committed suicide. And I don't personally know the background of the officer, but it was a good friend, a friend of mine. And this is just to show you that they need to seek help also when they need it. And that's the process of transformation we're referring to, that if you're in a state in your journey where you need help in your personal life, if you need help with your children, if you need help, you know, with your job, your profession, don't ignore the symptoms.
Correct.
Don't try to put up a front. It's not about putting up front for other people. It's about helping yourself.
Right.
And this is why I'm so excited this year, Richard, about the 2014 Transformational Show, because it's about evolving people forward in life, and we don't want them to be stuck, whether it be emotionally, mentally, or physically. We want everybody to be more successful in whatever areas are inhibiting them, and you have demonstrated throughout your journey that regardless of these challenges and these setbacks and what you have gone through, because you were also homeless for a short period of time of 7 months, but 7 months when you have nothing seems like an eternity.
Yeah, I mean, when you lose everything, house, car, everything, I was still working, but not in a job that I was used to, so I couldn't afford a place. So it frustrated me because I've heard the bad teacher, you know, the failure, but I also heard that my dad and good teachers too, that I can do anything. So at that time, I utilized that time to redirect my thoughts to, it's like, okay, I can't continue down that path of law enforcement due to several injuries that I had, but what else can I do? So I just changed my direction.
And that's when you began your transformation process as well, of doing writing in the middle of this great adversity of having to live in your truck for 7 months. You basically went through this process and you utilized your other talents and abilities to say, okay, wait a minute, there are other things I can do to help myself.
Yeah, and as a result of that period of time, it was a very humbling experience, clearly. So it allowed me to have a lot of empathy for those in that situation. So my writings, anything that I do, tries to, in some way, have a positive impact on those that would see it. But we need to change as a society. We need to change how we view people. I wasn't a homeless person. I was a person that didn't have a home. I wasn't an uneducated person. I was a person that struggled with my education.
That's great.
So if we just simply replace it and put the person first, then it makes that so much more human and relatable to people, because we also have to do that to ourselves, because it's easy when you're in a situation like that to think so bad. But I said, okay, this is a temporary situation.
Yes, everything's temporary.
It's a temporary situation. It is not a reflection of my worth. It's not a reflection of anything on me. It's just a situation.
Yes, a setback, and that's all it is, and it's temporary.
And then I will then get out of it, and it'll take a period of time and a process, and if I needed to ask somebody for help to do it, great. But it's not something, the onus was on me, not on anybody else.
Right, and what's important for everybody to know is, because transformation is a process, it's about encouraging everyone out there to begin and consider, this 2014 year, the year of global transformation, which is why I, began this show, and I'm here today with my global audience for encouragement. Every guest that I have, I consider a warrior of life, and what they've gone through in their journey can be of great influence and impact others to also begin the process of transformation for themselves. We don't want anybody to be stuck in a financial situation, in a mental or emotional situation. We want everyone to evolve and take advantage of resources out there, your creativity, your talents. Never ever give up. I always say that. And I want you, Richard, to share your professional information with the audience, because we will be coming to a close.
Sure.
So let them know about your current projects as a producer, writer, and actor, and where they can find you.
They can find me on Twitter, is the best place, at R Dana Brown, BROWNE, all together. Got several writing things in the process. Got a feature film that has been read by 2 top actresses that they totally enjoyed, so I'm going to be meeting with a producer friend on trying to get that going. Got a TV pilot that I collaborated with a good buddy of mine, a producer, and we're going to be trying to sit down and work on that. I'm executive producing a number of different things. Acting wise, I just keep going at it. If I'm not acting, I'm producing. If I'm not doing anything, I'm writing.
And
constantly staying
if
busy.
there's someone out there that wishes to collaborate with you, as far as writing or production, they can do so now. They can find you.
Yeah, they can find me.
Because we also want your fans and other viewers to follow you on Twitter and follow your future ventures.
Yeah, and I love talking to people on Twitter. It's just one of the, it's that interpersonal connection that you make with people. It's anybody that forgets that their fans put them where they are.
Yes, it's our fans. Absolutely. I'd be the first to say that I simply adore my fans. I always communicate with them. They've been my greatest support since day one, and I wouldn't be where I'm at today handling this new venture if it wasn't for them. And I'm sure you're just as passionate with your fans as I am. So as we come to a close, I want to thank you so much for being in the show and for taking some time off your busy schedule. I know you just flew in from Chicago last night,
Right.
and we were able to meet and have this live interview here in Los Angeles. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today for the Global Transformation Show. And remember, it's about a new world, a new journey, that of transformation. This is Connie Avila von Lightner, and you can find me on Twitter at Connie Image. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Richard,
you.
and we will see you next time.